Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I ain't no joke. I'll say it once again, and if I get provoked, there'll be knuckles on your chin.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss It, Chapter 2, which released in 2019, based on the novel by Stephen King, written by Gary Doberman, and directed by Andy Muschietti. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, 27 years have passed since the children defeated it. They have all grown up, and Mike, who has never left Derry, has come across evidence that the clown has returned. He has sent out the clown signal to all of his friends and has asked them to come back to help him defeat it once and for all.
Do you know, this is the longest running time for a horror movie to ever get theatrical distribution.
Wow.
Kind of broke a record there.
Nice.
But this film wasn't, definitely confirmed when they were making the first one.
Yeah.
They knew they were doing a part one. And of course, at the end of the first film, the end credit is chapter 1.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so is it just it, or is it part 1? I don't know. But this is definitely chapter 2.
Yes.
But yeah, it wasn't a sure thing at first, even though they kind of got word that it was going to be successful and they already started their casting. They asked a lot of the child stars who they wanted, or who they thought should play them, their 27-year, adult version of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cast actually got their request. For instance, Bill Hader was requested by Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah.
Jessica Chastain was requested by Sophie Lillis. And I just think that's kind of great. And apparently, Jessica Chastain was also the first one cast. They were having talks with her, I think, while the first one was still in cinemas.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. And I have to say, compared to the miniseries, I think It Part 2 has done a phenomenal job with its casting and casting actors that look very similar to their child stars. So it's much easier when you're watching the film going, well, which child was that one again?
Yeah. For me, this is my first time watching chapter 2. Like I said, I'd seen the first part and I was just like, okay, I'm going to wait, for that to die down and then I'll catch up with it. And then I knew that part 2 would be coming. So I was just like, well, I'll get the part 1 and part 2 together. So when it finally came onto the list to review, I was like, oh, finally I can actually sit down and watch it. But I got to admit, I was a bit nervous, because, well, the TV miniseries part 2 is not really great in comparison to part 1. It's good. I might enjoy it now that I'm a bit older and I understand a few more of the jokes. But like I said, there was just something missing. I suppose it's the nostalgia of the children. I wasn't too sure of how the adult versions would compare to how the child actors worked. And the fact it's like 2 hours and 50 fucking minutes, which is like fucking 30 minutes longer than part 1. I was like, oh my God, how is this going to keep my attention? I know what's coming. I know how it's going to flow. What are you going to give me, movie, that I haven't already experienced? And I've got to admit, I fucking loved it. I really did. Like you said, the adult versions of the children, I felt a real connection between them and their child versions. I loved the development of bringing it to present day, 27 years later. So there was a bit more advancement. I just loved seeing Bill Skarsgård again as the clown, but actually a weaker version of the clown in comparison to the first one that we'd seen. And so just everything just really, really worked. Like, that whole opening sequence where obviously we've got the gay couple walking around the fair. And at first I was like, why are you doing this? What are you trying to deliver here, movie? What kind of message are you saying? And it immediately dawned on me that it's just like, well, who are the real monsters? Really, when you see what happens to them.
It's the adults, mostly, in this town.
Yeah.
Of course. And, well, this is actually a scene that's in this film that obviously wasn't in the miniseries, but it is in the book.
Oh, right.
And it is also based on a real event as well.
Oh, wow.
Which King has commented on. So actually having it in the film, I kind of applaud it, really.
Yeah, so do I.
And, of course, a lot of people are upset with the representation in the film, but, it's pretty brutal what happens to this couple.
Yeah.
Except it's based on a real event. But it is an awesome reintroduction to Skarsgård as Pennywise,
Yes.
where when he's been thrown off the bridge and he's submerged, but he's coming up for air.
Yeah.
And you see Pennywise there, just a glimpse of him,
hand
just
out.
reaching out to rescue him. And of course, when his friend finally gets there to find him, Pennywise is feasting on him and literally bites a chunk out of him.
Yeah.
And again, a great visual where, the entire area is just filled with those red balloons.
Yeah.
Just everywhere. Now, of course, in the carnival just earlier, there was red balloons. But of course, it's carnival, so there would be red balloons. But
Yeah.
it's almost like just foreshadowing Pennywise's emergence and, revival after a 27-year sleep.
I got to give it to Isaiah Mustafa, who plays Mike. I was looking up the background for a lot of the actors that obviously join us in this movie, and he's the Old Spice guy. He's the guy who sits on the horse and tells you that you could smell just like him, and I was just like, oh my god, But he hears the news report, the police report over the band. Like he's stayed in the town. He still remembers. He's been waiting for it to return. And so as soon as he hears the police band, he shoots over to the bridge. He hears. You could just hear the boyfriend at the ambulance say about some clown that's obviously mutilated the boy's body. Distracting everybody from the actual beating that the two of them have got.
Small bit of trivia for you. Did
Yeah.
you recognise the little boy bully?
I tried to. I kept trying. I was just like, your face looks familiar, but I wasn't too sure.
Well, it appeared on the missing posters in the previous film because that's the actress that played Betty Ripsom.
Oh!
Who had, of course, died in the earlier course of the first part.
Nice.
I was like, that's cool. They reused the same actor.
Yeah, and obviously Mike sees that message written on the bridge in blood. Come home, come home, come home. And so immediately he's got to send out the message to everybody. Like you said, Jessica Chastain as the new Bev. Like, yeah, you can easily see the connection between her and Sophie Lillis. She's a beautiful actress, and it's weird that she would find herself in another abusive relationship.
Not weird at all.
Well,
Not with where these kids are concerned, where they are all massively traumatized by their pasts, but somehow made by it as well.
That's true, yeah.
You will find that a lot of the characters in this go back to or end up in very similar positions.
They do,
For
yeah.
instance, Eddie, who's
yeah.
literally married his mother.
yeah, he has, literally.
Just to go with recasting the same actresses here, if you didn't realise, the actress that plays his wife was the actress that plays his mother.
I thought that was great.
Great, yeah.
I thought that
So
was great.
it's honestly no surprise, that Bev would fall into this thing because she's not healed from it, not learned from it, not evolved from it, but also forgotten her past.
That's what
so
I was
it's
gonna
kind of
go
like
with. Yeah, it's like she's forgotten everything that happened in Derry, but then she's ended up in the exact same situation, and she beat the fuck out of that guy.
Yeah.
And I was so glad for her too, because personally, I didn't want her to be with him. I wanted her to be with Ben.
Well, it also kind of suggests that like Pennywise has been controlling him or her, and this anyway, because when she comes running down the stairs and there's a big portrait
there's
there,
the portrait, yeah.
Pennywise is in the top right corner of that picture.
Oh!
Like it's hard to see, but he's there.
Ah,
It's just
nice.
Yeah, manipulating everything.
I mean, I love the introduction to all of the adult characters. Like I said, Ben is now an architect. He's thin. He looks a hell of a lot like fucking Doctor Strange.
Just another bit of trivia right here for you.
Yeah.
Did you recognise any of the actors in that boardroom?
No.
It was Brandon Crane, who played young Ben in the miniseries, is the first one we cut to in the office that makes you
Right.
go, oh, that's grown-up Ben. But it was OG Ben.
It's OG
before
Ben.
it cuts to the new Ben, who's doing a conference call away from the office.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
I loved James Ranson playing Eddie. I think, personally, I'm just going to put it on the limb now, he was possibly my all-time favourite character of this whole entire part 2. Like, he was just so funny, so quick-witted, exactly like the younger version of him, just
He's very wild-eyed and almost cartoonish.
Yeah, and he's got a job now as like a safety inspector. You know, he's taken his hypochondriac.
A risk analyst.
Yeah, risk analyst.
But in the book, he owns a chauffeur company, which is also linked to his license plate of the car that he's driving in this as well. So it's like, so which job does he have?
Yeah, I absolutely loved him. And also we've got James McAvoy playing older Bill. You know, I absolutely love James McAvoy. You know, the more performances I see him do, you like his ability to make the characters his own. You know, it's still James McAvoy. It's still the same guy from Glass. It's still the same guy from X-Men. It's still the same guy from Wanted. But he's able to take his character and just mold it and shape it so that he either fits it or it fits him. So like when we see him on the sound stage, and he's basically Stephen King, isn't he? He's written novels, and people want to adapt them into films.
Stephen King puts writers in all his stories, so yeah.
Yeah.
But this film gets meta with the whole Stephen King's terrible at his endings.
Yeah.
So there's a commentary on everyone just saying your ending sucks, Bill. And it's like it's fine. But I mean, there even becomes a scene later when Bill gets to Derry and he's chatting with Stephen King, and even Stephen King tells Bill, your ending sucks. It's just like, great. Yeah, it's great.
I kind of like the way how they kind of just got rid of the wife character for Bill. You know, in the TV series, she would come to
Audrey
Derry.
is a pretty important part because she's left out of the film, as well as Bev's husband, because Audrey and Bev's husband come to Derry, and Pennywise controls the husband and kidnaps Audrey and takes them away.
Yeah.
But of course, neither character returns to this. But then again, the film's 3 hours long already.
Yeah. Did we really need them? We already know that they should take out things that aren't going to translate very well. And then we've got the amazing Bill Hader playing Richie. You know, the first scene we see him, he's throwing up over the balcony because obviously he's got this memory back, and then he's gone to go on stage and do his comedy routine, but he just can't remember it. And I just love the way that Mike's now stuck this message out to everybody, and they've had this kind of, you know, fear come back to them. They can't remember why, and that's obviously the power of Derry. Once you move away, you'll forget it and forget everything, but once it comes back, especially for these children, they've now got a group back. And I've got to say, I was really worried that 2 hours and 50 minutes would drag, but for me, the pacing in this was just on point. Like, I kept stopping every now and then. Like, I broke up the film to have a break, you know. After an hour, I went and made a cup of tea, and I came back and I pressed play again. And after the second hour, I was just like, man, there's only 50 minutes left. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I was really...
I agree with you on the pace. Every time I've watched this film, I've never taken a break, but the 3 hours has zipped by so fast. I was just like, there's no way, that was 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that's a testament to how good the pacing is and how good the visuals and audio and everything is about the production value that easily keeps you invested. And the film's broken up very well with the Pennywise, honest, scary, good moments for me in the film. And one of these comes in about 40 minutes into the film, where I think this was almost advertised early on before the film came out as what I conceived would be the opening scene.
Right,
because it's very reminiscent to the Georgie scene in the rain, where we follow this little girl who's following the firefly underneath the bleachers.
Yeah.
Before Pennywise lures her in with the promise of blowing away her birthmark, her defect. And of course the little girl's immediately like, I'm not your friend, I'm scared of you, you're creepy and weird.
Yeah.
But the prospect of, you know, having this mark removed off her face would, you know, you saw her reaction to the possibility of it, and of course it is nasty. The way that he's like, we're going to count to 3, but during the countdown he doesn't count the last number, and he's just drooling in anticipation of killing this girl, and he morphs very quickly, bites down on her, and the camera retreats back away. It's like, that was great, for a great horror segment. And it is a highlight for me, this film, is all of these great horror segments throughout the film. But I'd also say that there are so many moments like this where they just feel like short stories, short pieces.
Yeah.
Like the gay couple at the beginning that gets killed, that kind of sets things up. But like there's no payoff later. Like the Georgie scene at the beginning, You know, it's Bill's impetus throughout the whole film to find out who killed his younger brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas we have these kills at the beginning and we have these kills throughout the film, and we're just like, there's no real direct, tangible link to our characters.
Whoa.
So it feels a little bit disjointed, where it was a bit of a mess.
You're supposed to say 3.
I can kind of see it from that point of view as well, but at the same time, I actually did enjoy the less amount of Pennywise we had in this movie in comparison to part 1, where it does just feel like he's in everything. He's in every shot. He's in the background and that. With this one, it was like, no. We want to keep the focus on the adults coming back and them obviously building up the strength to face Pennywise. You know, we get, like I said, we get the kill at the beginning. We get that little girl brutal death, which, Jesus Christ, I mean, kill a kid off, for example. You know, and then obviously we've got that other situation later on with James McAvoy and the skateboard kid.
Yeah.
But I thought it worked as well that, you know, the focus was on the Losers Club coming back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
doing their thing. And, you know, being a fan of the TV miniseries, there were like certain points I did want to see. There were certain things I did want to hear, you know, and like the Chinese restaurant is just an iconic sequence. So I was like, oh, well, how are they going to do that? And then as I started to see all the people turn up at this Chinese restaurant, I was like, oh, fuck, it's happening quick, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, the CGI in this sequence is looking pretty rough. Honestly,
yeah.
There's a lot of CGI in this film.
Yes, in this
and
one,
it is
yeah.
very, very distracting, or it was for me. I liked the creatures and the concepts and the ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
But with all the characters freaking out as much as they were, it kind of had a comedic effect on me, where
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, what is going on? Like, it's so bizarre. But yeah, I didn't find it scary. I was more confused, you know, really.
Yeah, like the singing heads in the fucking aquariums.
Yeah. So it was just like, I didn't feel the fear for these characters that they were supposed to have. I guess I'm kind of banking on their fear of what happened like 27 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Catching up with them to sell these characters on this fear. But yeah, and this scene as well is broken up with comedy beats, because Mike starts hammering at the table with a chair.
And he's trying to kill the shit, but nobody else can see it. So you got to remember yourself.
The waitress comes in, but she's like, is there a problem?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like complete mess. He's like, I'm sure, like, you know, as restrained as she is, she'd be a little bit more.
But it's dairy. That's the thing,
Yeah,
isn't
it
it?
is
You got to
dairy.
remember
You're right.
it's dairy.
On that note, yeah.
You know, she's probably seen this like 100 times. Like, people just smash. It's like when the little kid comes up and says something to Bill Hader,
Yeah.
and he just gets really angry at the kid, and I'm just like, okay, so we've established the kid's real. Where's his parents? And the parents just come up and they just walk him away. Where, like you said, in real life, the dad would have punched fucking Richie in the face, but they just kind of ignore it. And I gotta admit, like, I suppose if I had one issue with the movie, it's the, hey, we'll all group up. Stanley's not made it. We're all gonna leave now. Oh, we're gonna group up again. We're all gonna get ready to leave, and we're going. But you know,
I like that Richie is the one who's just like, hey, if you told me over the phone that we were going to come back here to kill a clown that we failed to kill 27 years ago, I wouldn't have brought my ass back to Derry, so I'm leaving. Yeah. And the rest of them are like, you know what, fuck, he's right. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. And it's only Bill who really hangs around. Catches up with Mike. Mike takes him back and drugs him.
yeah, he does.
It's like, we're going to go on an acid trip, man. It's going to be great. We're going to show you the origins of it. And Pennywise the clown. You're going to love it.
I have a question.
No.
Okay, so from what we see in the vision is that it, Pennywise, whatever you want to call it, came from space.
Yes.
Right? And smashed into the ground.
Yeah.
And he takes on the form of a clown. And
eventually, not straight away.
Not straight away, but he does take on the form of a clown.
Interestingly, in the flashback visions here, and also I think later on in the film, like right towards the end, we see a flying bird, which was one of the things that Mike saw in the book. We also, I think, see the spider form from the miniseries.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of those creatures and monstrous forms is what it would have taken on
Yeah.
throughout the centuries.
But he's come from space.
Yeah.
Takes on the form of a clown
Eventually.
and kills.
Yes.
So he's a killer clown from outer space.
Well, yep.
Jesus, Rich, you don't remember lying from your own show?
Don't write my own material.
I fucking knew it! I fucking knew it!
And this ritual of Chud or Chud,
yeah.
or like this is from the book.
Yes,
this
it is.
This is like a big Dark Tower kind of Stephen King.
Absolutely. Well,
Universal
there's
thing.
reference to the Dark Tower on the device, the trap as well. There's
right.
the star. Well, I mean, it looks like the meteor that's crashing in.
Yeah,
There's also the star with the longest one being the Dark Tower.
Right.
So yeah, I was like, yeah, there's Dark Tower references, and of course the turtle
Yes.
appears again in the school when Ben goes back there
Yeah.
to go and find his token for the ritual of Chud. Now, yeah, of course, the ritual of Chud or Chud is in the book,
Yeah.
but the going off and getting tokens is not.
Right.
But I like the way the film kind of like you have to go and find your memory piece, your thing that's going to empower you to
Yes.
not be afraid anymore. So makes it a visual, physical token for the ritual. I was like, yeah, you know what? For the film, it works.
And I think for me as well, that middle part is what really strengthened the movie for me. Making the connection from part 1 to part 2 is that they sit there in the little hideout, don't they? The little den that they'd made. And
Which wasn't in the first film.
which wasn't in the first film, but they discuss about how like they need to get up the memories from that summer because I think it's Richie who says, "Oh, we were all together," and Bill was just like, "No, we weren't together for a short period because they did break up," and so it was like a nice insertion of what we've seen in the first movie of them breaking up and then getting back together. It's now elongated in this movie where it's just like, right, we'll go watch Richie go off and try to play Street Fighter with a friend, and then all of a sudden people are telling him that he's gay, and it turns out that he is homosexual, but he didn't know at that point. He didn't know when he was younger. So as a child, it was traumatizing, and Finn Wolfhard played that part really well. Like the shower cap sequence with Stanley as well in the hideout. I thought that was great. Why are we putting this on to hide spiders? And he turns and he sees the whole crew there. Beverly, oh my fucking god, Mrs. Kirsch.
Oh wow, yeah. It was a scene. It was one of the ones I was really anticipating because
Yeah.
her returning to her old home in the miniseries was great. Like
Yes.
the actress playing the part, wonderful, and I think they did that really well here. The
They
whole
did.
pressing the doorbell and realizing it says Kirsch instead of Marsh.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Bill Skarsgård's voice who answers the door
Ah.
before it transitions to the old lady.
Yeah.
All the way to her just, peeking around
Weird
the corner.
little dance that she does.
Just scuffling off to the side naked, the record playing, the way that they're sat there and drinking the tea, and we see the picture of another character that Pennywise or the entity would inhabit for a while.
It's like Bill Gray.
That's it. That's it. Yes, that's it.
I mean, her full-on change into that weird witch
It's
thing.
the witch from Hansel and Gretel, which is Beverly's fear from the book. So
right.
it makes sense there. But yeah, the CGI-ness is horrendous. I felt it was way too fast and animated and brightly lit.
Kind of cartoony-ish.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But then, like we said in part 1, there's just no way that you could have probably done it with practical effects. We'd had as much build-up with the old lady and practical effects we could, that now we've got to really scare you with this horrible monster, and you're going to believe a person in a rubber suit. I don't think so.
I think if they'd lit it correctly, you would have got away with it. The fact that this has some broad lighting on it, the fact that everything's there, like everything, you're going to see everything when this creature comes running at the camera.
She does.
Yeah, and it's disgusting, which of course is the effect, but it just didn't feel like it was natural.
Yeah,
now,
that's
you
how I
can
felt.
also say that of course none of it's real. It's all in your head.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
famous, but I'm just like, it just disconnected me. And it's an unfortunate because I
Yeah.
like the scene.
But then again, like I said, with me, I was watching it. I knew this sequence was coming. I knew she was going to turn into a horrible witch, and she's actually Pennywise. Maybe I would have preferred Bill Skarsgård standing at the door waving like Tim Curry had done in the miniseries. But at the same time, in comparison, like when Ben goes back to the school, and he's walking around and he's he gets woken up in his class and everybody's whacking him on the head, and then Beverly comes into the room, and I was sat there, I was just like, I can't be Beverly.
Well, we had the Pennywise silhouette from the projector.
That's it,
so it's just like, well,
it.
we know, but of course it's there to emotionally torment young Ben. He's, of course, crushing hard on Bev. As she breaks his heart as he's going in for the kiss, and she's just like, we're just friends.
I'd never
and then, of
you.
course, January embers fires and engulfs in flames and chases him through the school.
Such an amazing shot.
Yes, yeah, really effective.
Your hair is with their fire!
I like when he gets into the locker and then you just see Pennywise go, "Kiss me, fat boy." He's like, run!
I'm so glad they got that line in there.
I did read somewhere that they were hoping to get Guillermo del Toro to play the janitor that Ben bumps into, but he was unavailable.
That's a shame.
Yeah, and at the same time we've got Eddie. He's gone back to the pharmacist, and so we see the old man pharmacist behind the fucking counter who is just touching his face and wanting to pop it, and he's licking his finger. God knows what he's doing behind the counter. I thought he was masturbating when Eddie first turned up. I fucking hope he wasn't.
Director's cameo in the background in the scene as well.
Yeah. And he goes into the basement. Well, he has the memory of him going into the basement. Now, is this sequence in the book? I was trying to remember. It's not in the miniseries, is it?
Don't recall this bit, no.
Where he goes down to the basement and he finds his mum who's been tied to a bed, and the horrible leper man has been chained up, and then he comes flying along and tries to French kiss the mum.
Yeah.
Which was pretty fucking gross, but it wasn't. It was made even more gross by, old man Eddie being in the basement and him being confronted by the leper again, and they have a fight. And as he's strangling the leper, he's getting the upper hand, he's feeling really good. And then it just spits all that gunk into his face, and the music fucking changed.
Yeah. Now,
why?
What exactly? This is so bizarre. Now, I mentioned in the first film when they did that weird, audio bit with the new kids on the block, and this film just comes in with that music number for like 4 seconds. He's being vomited on, and then he's rushing out again. I was like, this is bad, like really, really bad, because it felt like it was meant to be a horrific, scary moment. They probably sat there and watched it without the music and getting vomited on and him screaming. Or actually, he's not screaming because his mouth's closed. Yeah. And then he screams afterwards. And I was like, I guess the editors just didn't know what to do with this. I guess they didn't feel like it had an impact. So instead of it being scary, let's make it funny. Which I'm like...
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, but I'm like, but that's the problem I have with this film is like, it wants to be scary and it wants to be funny, but it doesn't want to be a horror comedy, and so some of the horror stuff is too broadly lit, so I'm like, it feels like a children's horror movie, but then you get the bits where Pennywise is in the shadows luring kids in, being creepy, I'm like, that's horror, and then I get moments like this where I'm like, that's comedy. I'm like, Evil Dead does it well. Characters in Evil Dead get vomited on and blood gushers on their face all the time. But it's funny, but it plays it straight.
Yeah.
This film just doesn't know quite what it wants to be at times. And again, another disconnect for me here. So like, that whole sequence is just immediately yanks me flying out of the film because it doesn't fit.
Maybe at the same time, I just had so much love for Eddie at this point that when it happened to him, I was just like, all right, I get the joke. He's afraid of, gore and gushing and cancer and whatnot. So now we just got to have it in the face. And breaking up the levity just a little bit during a 3-hour movie. I mean,
You got Richie doing this. You got Bill Hader, who's literally the star of this film. Like, it's supposed to be Bill's story, But it's literally Richie's movie. He has more screen time. He does a great Finn Wolfhard impression playing the Richie character.
He does, yeah.
And his sequences stand out. Maybe it's because he's the loudest, the most vulgar.
Yeah, well, at the same time, like you said, with CGI, that whole sequence where he's in the main park, I could see how people might have a little
Bunyan
problem.
statue.
Yeah, at first Finn gets attacked by the lumberjack man.
Yeah.
And then it disappears. But then it cuts to Bill Hader being in the park, and all the people are dancing behind him, and Pennywise turns up with his massive load of balloons, and that's when he obviously reveals, I know your secret, your dirty little secret. And I was just like, okay, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to instill the fear in him. But at the same time, like you said in the first one, you're just letting him go. Why?
Come back and play! Come back and play with the clowns!
You've
Get
already...
them scared so he can kill them because they taste better when they're more afraid.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think Pennywise also knows he has to keep them afraid because otherwise he's going to lose.
That's a good point as well. I mean, we'd already had the Stanley death at the beginning, and I knew that was coming, but at the same time, it had a little bit of a different impact in this one, where in the first movie, it felt like Stanley was absolutely fucking terrified to go back. And he didn't want to go back. Where in this one, it felt like he knew something. And it does, and for that does pay off later on in the movie, so that when they've all come to terms with that Stanley's not going to be there, they're all obviously rushing around now thinking, how are we going to defeat this thing? Fucking, like you said, James McAvoy walking in the store and finding his old bike and talking to Stephen King. I felt justified. I really did, because for years, Stephen King had taken a lot of flack that, he's a great novelist, has really shitty endings. Sometimes they don't adapt well to movies, I will die on the fucking hill that Maximum Overdrive is one of the greatest fucking movies of all time. And to see Stephen King in his own movie, talking to James McAvoy, complaining about the ending. You want me to sign that book? Nah, it's all right. It's just like, oh, King, kick him while he's down. And then you get the comedy moment with him trying to ride his bike. That was cool.
Now, going back to that Stephen King scene, there was another weird edit in here where it cuts to various objects in the store.
Right.
And we hear the weird sound effect from each creature or item.
Yeah.
And it was just rapid cuts before it cut back again. I was like, oh, what was that?
Banjo, beaver.
Fucking bike.
If you want to use that kind of language, take it out in the street.
Like, what in the hell was that? Like, it was the film just trying to we're artsy and we're different and we're keeping you focused because this is just a scene of two people talking. So it's like, let's have some weird fancy edits and sounds. It's just like, whoa.
Did the guy who did the camera work for the first one return for this one?
I don't know, actually. I didn't check. That's one thing I didn't check.
Because that's it. I did feel...
I feel like the cinematography is much better in the first film.
The first one.
Compared to this one. Because this one, like, the shots are well put together. It's well framed. Like I said, the lighting was terrible for me in this one.
Yeah.
And also this film, it feels bathed in that ring filter, that murky green filter is on all the the submerged scenes. Granted, they're in the sewers, so the green lighting and everywhere, but it was so distracting again. I'm saying it's so green.
Yeah,
everything is too green. Maybe it didn't need to be, but yeah. Not as good visually in terms of the cinematography, but still. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was with the Stephen King scene was 2 Easter eggs in that scene.
All right, yeah.
But there's a license plate above the storekeeper, above King, which is CQB 124, which is the Christine license plate.
I was going to say, yeah.
He also sells the bike for $300, which is the first price he asks Arnie Cunningham for Christine in the story too. So I was like, that's cool.
That's cool. But when he gets on his bike, he's riding down the road and he sees his house, and this is where we see the skateboard kid again that we saw from the restaurant, and he kind of has an interaction with the kid after because he stops by the storm drain, doesn't he, where his brother had died. And he starts to believe that Georgie is still down there alive, which is like, dude, seriously, it's been fucking 27 years, okay? There's no way. But the arm sequence was really quite cool, Pennywise trying to pull him down to the drain.
All of the hundreds of hands forming Yeah, that was a great little effect.
And he confronts the little boy, and I thought the little boy did really well, saying like, you know, I hear voices. Where do you hear them? I hear them in the bathtub. Sometimes they're children. Sometimes they're a clown. And James McAvoy's just like, no, get out of town, go home, get your parents, run, get out of here. I'm like, bruh, calm down, Like if my kid came in the house like, Dad, we got to move, I'm not going to go like, okay, son.
Right,
You know?
exactly.
The bathtub's talking to me, Dad. I've got to go to the fair now. Now, I had seen the fair sequence on YouTube, so I kind of knew where that kid was going. But I did like the way that like they'd all come back to the little motel where they were staying at, and they're grouping up together for all their stuff. And at this point, Teach Grant, who plays Henry Bowers, the older version, has escaped from the mental ward, and that was really great because we'd seen him in the first one fall down the well. And so then in this one, he comes washing out the drain with all of the bodies, which I'm assuming must have been after Pennywise had been defeated. You know, the power had been let go. And so then he goes home and he's immediately arrested by the Derry Police Department for killing his dad. So then when we see him in the mental institution, like I've said, not to harken back too much to the miniseries, but the miniseries really did it quite well, where he comes across, Pennywise in the moon.
Yes.
And then...
Well, there's a reference to that in this version, because when he's looking underneath the bed, there's a wall above Henry's bed filled with drawings of the moon with Pennywise's face in them. So it's just like, so he's obviously still talking to him through the moon.
Yeah.
We're just not seeing it, but we're seeing a reminder of it.
Well, we see the balloon, don't we? And Henry's just like, yes, now is the time. He's absolutely insane.
Patrick Hossletter comes back with his knife,
The
of course,
zombie.
looking like a deadite. Yeah.
I think we could talk about the graphics and the visuals and the CGI of being bad, but when I saw that zombie, especially when he's driving the car, I was like, that's just so cool. And so then when we've got the group back at the motel and they've got all of their tokens, this is when Henry first turns up. And I was really worried for Eddie at this point, like, oh my God, they're going to kill him off. But he gets stabbed in the mouth and you can hear him talk and his teeth getting up for the metal. Like, why did you do that for? And then he gets his revenge by stabbing Henry back. Like, he misses a major artery and organ through the curtain.
I'm still confused because we see Henry walk out into the car park and pull the knife out and he's like, nah. I'm like, is he,
I kind of assumed it must have been like a shoulder part that he just...
I think it's the spell of Pennywise, because, I mean, like in the book, Pennywise, well, I mean, he's a liar as well, so maybe he has gifted him some kind of power.
Yeah. But
weird.
Henry manages to escape, and so the group obviously realise that he's gone, and Mike has returned back to the library to get all of his stuff together, and this is when Henry attacks Mike as well. And like in the TV miniseries, Mike is seriously wounded, and so they're one down before they go down into the pit. Where in this one, they have this little fight, and then fucking Bill Hader comes along with that fucking hatchet. I liked how James McAvoy looked at it earlier on in the sequence, and I was like, man, I really hope they use that.
Right. Well, that's Henry Bowers out of the movie.
Yeah. But Bill, he's told everybody, like, look, I don't want you to get hurt anymore. I don't want any of you to die, so I'm going to go face this clown on my own. And we know he can't do it.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, that's right after the fun fair part,
yes.
after the Hall of Mirrors, where I thought it was a great sequence.
Sequence.
Pennywise just appearing in the shadows and coming back again. The way he starts headbutting the glass repeatedly,
yes.
I was like, it's a bit silly.
You see his face flattening though. Every time he hits, just making his face flat.
But then, killing that kid right in front of him. Now, part of me is also like, I don't know if whether... Part of me is like, maybe that kid and the whole family was just there just so that Pennywise could do this kill and enact to this moment just to toy with Bill.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe it did actually happen, but it's enough anyway to send Bill right to that old house. But of course, the rest of the losers turn up at the same time.
Yeah, and they're ready to go in there, but obviously Eddie's quite terrified, and they're all worried about what they're going to come across. And I was really happy as well, because in the TV miniseries you get the Stanley head in the fridge sequence.
Yes.
Which is just so fun to watch. And then in this one, they do it again, but they use the younger actor for Stanley, and you just watch the head roll out and on the floor, and he's talking about how upset he is, and like how it hurts, and you're feeling really bad for him, and then you start watching the spider legs start to pop out the side of the head. Now immediately I just thought of The Thing.
Oh.
And then Bill Hader just drops the fucking immortal lines, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." And I fucking cheered. I was just like, yes! That's the best fucking Thing reference I've fucking ever heard.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yeah, it's really great. I think the effect here works really well. The spider legs with almost the hands as well.
Yes, the
as
tiny
legs.
little hands.
So the way it moves around. And of course, the spider thing jumps on Richie, who of course was the one who didn't want to put the shower curtain on for spiders getting in his hair.
Yes,
I was just like, oh, it's a little payoff there. It's great.
But Eddie is absolutely terrified, and Bill's trying to get him to help him take on the spider, and then all of a sudden fucking Ben comes out with a knife and stabs it.
A few times.
Keeps fucking stabbing.
But it still doesn't kill it, does it? Because it
No,
kind of
it
limps
goes off,
away.
yeah.
But then I was like, but was it really there?
Was it even there? Yeah. And they're just getting prepped for this final battle, which, like I said, I was really surprised with the length and the pacing, because it just seemed to keep going until it got to this point where they're getting to the house, and then they're going down into the pit. But then once they get down into the sewers, they come across Pennywise's old lair, and he's gone.
Right.
Everything's gone, and I was just like, okay, where are we going with this? Because there's still at least 15 minutes of the movie to go, and you're getting ready for the final battle. But the old witch turns up. She tries to attack Beverly, and all the boys have to go and rescue her and pull her up. And then they like that sewer lid. Was that part of the fucking clown carriage that we'd seen?
I think so in the other image, yes. Yeah.
So, like you said, Pennywise must have had the power to get Bob Gray at some point, or take on his form or something. Because we had that great bit with Bev in the house where, Bob Gray or Pennywise, whoever it is, Bill Skarsgård at least, is painting his face.
That's right.
And then ripping his eyes and making the light. I thought that shot was absolutely great.
Yeah, it was also just great to see Bill out of the Pennywise makeup for just a moment. That was horrifying. That was really great.
Yeah.
But of course, they get Bev back and they open up the thing and they realise the great big hole going deep underground.
Yeah.
So they have to make their way down there, and then they start performing the ritual of Chud, and they start putting in their tokens.
That room, I did love the cavern.
Yeah.
Just the idea that whatever
it crashed
had
here.
Fucking crashed. It was a complete alien, and this was its base of operations. And like Eddie's just like, this has been under the town the whole fucking time, and yeah, like you said, they're getting this ritual prepared. But what Mike has failed to mention, and what we had kind of noticed a little bit, was this vase thing has 4 sides, but one of them has been scratched out, really completely scratched out, and so they throw all their tokens into the vase, and they set it on fire, and it's just little joke after joke, like, that's not going to burn. That metal's not going to burn. I'm putting this stone in, Bev.
It's definitely not going to burn.
It's definitely not going to burn.
But yeah, then we watch the deadlights come down, and they're going into the thing, and they're all chanting, and they put the lid on, but then they're like, "Was that it? Is it over? Was that easy?" Oh, and then the big red balloon starts to burst out, and they're like, "Oh, keep chanting, keep chanting!" And yeah, the balloon gets massive, and it bursts, and it sends a sound wave through the room that reverberates, knocking them all over, and they're deafened by it. And they're like, "Whoa, how did it fail?" And Pennywise turns up to start taunting Mike, like, you knew that it would fail. You were the weak link here. Because he then causes a flashback for them all, where we see the Native Americans in some form or other getting absolutely obliterated as they were trying to perform the ritual. And we are told that they didn't actually believe they could kill it.
Yes.
So
they were still
they didn't
scared.
believe. So the fact that they didn't believe it was like how Bill managed to shoot Pennywise with the cowl gun, because he really believed it. So if they all really believed the ritual would work, they would actually kill it. But I guess maybe it was Mike's fault then, because he was the one who knew that. But so he had doubt.
Well, yeah, and
so he has to confess, like, yeah, I thought it would, but because if you all believed, but it didn't.
But then, as with the way the story had gone through the movie, there's no way he could have turned to them and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's a high chance that this could fail if we don't believe," because half of them didn't believe anyway. Half of them were trying to avoid it. Half of them were terrified throughout the movie. So yeah, by this point, I was like, "Oh no, the group's going to fracture," and I like you said, talking about the graphics and CGI, it all builds up to this point of seeing Pennywise come out in that huge spider form.
Yeah.
Which...
Well, it's like the story goes, like, the book goes, like, into, like the cosmos, like cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Where they, like, Maturin, the turtle, ends up, like, helping them defeat the evil that is it. And there's all this weird stuff. And then the miniseries ends with the spider. And it's just like, what's iconic about Stephen King's It?
Yeah.
Pennywise. So let's make Pennywise the spider.
which I thought was pretty cool, because it's just a huge boss battle.
I couldn't help this whole time looking at this going, I've seen this before in Beetlejuice. It literally felt like a stepbrother of Beetlejuice, Tim Burton.
But it for me, it was great because he starts to just try. He separates them all, doesn't he? We get Ben. Sorry, Ben and Bev. They get completely separated. Bev stuck in a toilet stall, like in the beginning of the first movie, and it starts to fill up with blood. And Ben gets stuck in his hideout, and that starts to suffocate him. Bill, he's stuck in the basement of his house in the water, like we'd seen in the first movie. And he's hearing Georgie and Bill talk, but they kind of hate each other. Bill... They
blame each other, yeah.
They blame each other, and Bill's telling Georgie, like, I didn't want to play with you because I just wanted a day to myself, so you died for those reasons. Eddie and Richie, they get chased by that weird mouth kind of fucking thing, and they come across the 3 doors again, which is a great fucking callback sequence.
So let's do the not scary at all, and it's just a closet.
The fucking puppy! Oh, man.
Yeah.
When he said, "Oh, I hope that the creature is actually this Pomeranian puppy or whatever," I just kind of laughed off. And then when they opened the door and they saw it, I was like, "Kick it in the face! Fucking kick it!"
And of course, it turns into a giant zombie CGI monster.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But it's just building up to the great finale, and you get, Ben and Bev, they kind of reconcile. She realizes that actually he's the one who wrote the note.
Yeah.
He's the one that's always kind of loved her. He will always love her and will die for her. So, I did love that sequence. She kicks, because she had all those different people attacking the door, didn't she?
That's right. Yeah. Doing a Shining impression at one point. There was a Shining nod earlier where the water's rushing through the corridor and it reminds you of the blood from the elevator.
Yeah. And she kicks open the door, and the camera tilts, and she reaches her hands down. She pulls Ben out of the muddy pit.
She pulls him out of a horrible CGI effect.
Hey, like I said, I had a horrible time reminding myself he's not Doctor Strange.
Right.
Throughout the whole movie, that poor actor Jay Ryan, I just kept looking at him, going, "Oh, you're Benedict Cumberbatch." No, you're not. You're not fucking Doctor Strange. And you've had Bill confront himself as well, that he's not afraid of him, and his reasons for not going with Georgie weren't true. And I did feel really bad because you had Richie run out and confront Pennywise, trying to distract them from trying to distract the clown from everybody else, and he immediately gets hit by the deadlights, which I thought was just great transition.
Yeah, great, because he's given it everything, and then just boom, taken out. Yeah, it was great. And then Eddie has his moment where he's got the fence post that Bev gave him and told him this kills monsters.
Yeah,
and he just throws it right into his face, and of course Pennywise spiders choking on it as he drops Richie. And he's going to say, I killed it again, and he gets impaled right through the back by one of the legs and thrown down the side. Now in the book, Eddie gets his arm chewed off or bitten off, and then dies from blood loss and shock. But I think it's cool that when Richie goes back to start fighting it, he breaks off one of its arms instead.
Does.
So I was like, that's cool.
I was going to say, in the TV miniseries, I can't remember, but he gets his ribs crushed, doesn't he?
He gets crushed, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. And so when I saw Eddie get spiked, I knew he wasn't going to survive, because obviously he never does, but it was just the emotion of everybody else, they're wanting to
Mostly
rescue him.
from Bill Hader, really, as Richie, who...
Well, because he secretly always loved him.
Yes, yeah.
All the hatred that they'd had and all the back talk and comedy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, fucking Eddie even gets that wonderful line at the end before he dies, like, I fucked your mum.
Hey, Richie, I gotta tell you something.
What? What's up, buddy?
I fucked your mother.
I was just like you said, I know it's supposed to be a horror. I know I'm not supposed to be laughing, but the movie just kind of slips it in, just like, just to kind of raise the levity a little bit, because we don't want you all being really massively upset. And the gang come to the realization, because one of the things the Native Americans that had faced it had worked out before was that he has to embody the shape that he is.
He has to respect the laws of the body that he's in. So so they realize, like, the size of it right now is massive, and so in order for him to get out into Derry, he needs to be a smaller form.
Yeah.
So hence, the transformations. So like, well, let's lure him here where he'll be small and not this giant thing that can easily kill us.
Yeah.
But after they do that, they kind of fail at that.
Yeah.
So, but then they realize, hey, wait a minute, let's just do what we did in the first movie and not be scared anymore.
Yeah.
And make him feel small.
Yeah.
By verbally putting him down.
Yeah.
And calling him a clown. And, they will repeat it.
Enforcing kind of all of what they were afraid of onto him. So he has to take on these forms. But there's so many, and they're not scared, that you just watch it start to become smaller.
The eater of worlds.
I love that way. I'm the eater of worlds. Scream at them. They're like, fuck you, bitch.
Essentially,
You ain't shit, and he gets smaller,
crumbles and shrinks.
And it kind of made me just funny, because, like, he must be, millions of years old.
Yeah.
And he
well, I mean, the turtle existed
years.
Before creation, so I'm guessing. I think it probably did it in some form as well.
But he could have started off as that tiny ass little fucking clown that we see at the end, and he had to take on all these other forms. But then why take on that final form of the clown, other than
it's just because he likes it.
Yeah,
it literally is because he likes it.
Yeah, and they get him to just be smaller, and he becomes part of the wall, doesn't he? His face starts to melt back, and he actually becomes quite pitiful.
Yes,
quite like a baby, and he's just like, oh, no, don't hurt me, and they all just gather around him, and they just punch their hand through his chest and pull out his heart. And he's like, oh no, I don't want to die. And I did feel kind of slightly sorry for him, because maybe it's just Skarsgård's performance. He's such a great actor. He can emote so well, even under all this sort of makeup and effects. And they all gather around and they get the heart, and then they just fucking squish it.
Yeah.
And Pennywise just kind of melts and disintegrates.
Pretty much, yeah. And then everything starts to fall around them. Of course, Eddie has his final moment and has also died. But Richie doesn't want to leave the body, but they've all got to run as the whole house eventually comes crashing down.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, the whole of Derry comes crashing down. But yeah, they left it with just the house, and then everyone pretty much going back to the river and cleansing themselves. Where they first met the turtle.
Yeah, and that's where, like, Ben and Bev obviously get together and realize they're in love, and I loved those nods in this movie. Like, we'd seen it in the Chinese restaurant where Bill and Bev were talking, and you can see kind of Ben in the background, kind of looking, feeling kind of like jealous. In the flashback sequence from the first movie when Ben had left Bill and Bev alone there, he was wiping away his tears because he actually still loved her, and didn't want her to love Bill.
Yeah.
And so now they're getting together. I was just like, yeah, they're finally together, you know, and they're all kind of hugging Richie to be like, look, you know, we understand your loss, but you know, Eddie's fine now. At least he's gone to heaven or wherever he's got to go.
It was a touching moment where he's recarving their names in the post again on the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, and they all start going their separate ways. Like I said, Ben and Bev, they get married. Or like I read somewhere that they got married, but you just see them on a boat with a dog. You know, so you realise that they must be happy together.
Yeah.
You know,
Bill's gone off and started writing his own book.
Yeah.
So we find out, if you look at the text, he's actually... That's the text from Stephen King's It.
Nice.
And the closing narration of the film is, I think it's Eddie's internal monologue from one of the chapters from It.
Wow.
That plays out the end of the film.
Yeah, and Gary let me know as well before we turn on the camera that actually Bill is writing his story in the little office.
Yes.
From Stand By Me.
The same house. It's just like,
the same house.
It's so confusing. It's jarring. You're like, wait a minute. I guess maybe Gordy moved out and now he's moved in. It's like shared universe, man.
Yeah. And Mike rings him. He rings him up and he's just like, look, you know, I'm planning on leaving. You know, why are our memories not fading? Well, because maybe it's dead properly now, you know, or you've actually held on to these strong memories because of the, you know, group mentality. And Mike's planning on just getting out of Derry for the final time. He wants to go traveling because we'd seen him as the young version saying he wanted to go to LA, you know, in California and all that. But obviously after the It fiasco, he'd stayed there. And he says to Bill, like, you know, did you get the letter? What letter? And he's just like, just read it and then call me after. And I did kind of get a little bit emotional with this because, you know, it's not in the miniseries and I've never read the book.
It's not in the book.
It's not in the book either. But Stanley's death, you know, had an impact where before he'd actually killed himself, he'd written letters to everybody explaining, like, look, I knew I was the weakest link. I knew my fear would overtake me, and I knew, because we'd also seen the Deadlights as well in the first movie, that if he returned, he would get them all killed. And so his death, in a way, was to strengthen them, to give them a reason. And so by the end of the movie, they're doing like a kind of fucking Breakfast Club thing, where like all of the adult actors say like a little part, and then all of the young actors say a little part, and that window shot as well. I fucking love that window shot.
Yeah.
You know, and just them all getting off together and the movie. Oh yeah, tears.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think It is dead?
Oh yeah, motherfucker! They ripped this fucking heart out. Like. Can he come back after getting his heart fucking ripped out?
Pennywise has appeared several times outside, of course, the It novel in Stephen King's, you know, multiverse of books.
Right.
He appears in Tommyknockers. Somebody mentioned seeing a clown with a silver outfit and orange hair.
He does, yeah.
He's mentioned in a couple of other stories. And so King's been asked, like, is it dead or is it alive? Because you've mentioned him a few times. And Stephen King said, it could very well still be alive, but I will never ever write another story about Pennywise because he frightens the life out of me, and I don't ever want to write more stories with that character because too scary. So I was like, it could very well still be, you know, an evil as powerful as Pennywise.
Is there more than one?
True, maybe.
You know, and
maybe
maybe other versions of creatures like him think, oh yeah, we'll be a clown on Earth for 5 minutes because it's fun.
Well, Iain, what were your favourite scenes from It, Chapter 2?
I absolutely love the movie. So pretty much all of the film for me is a favourite sequence. But there were two major sequences that stood out. One of them was the Stephen King sequence in the shop with Bill. Like I said, I just felt it was just absolutely justified, you know, where with the amount of adaptations and stories and novels and all the work that Stephen King has done through media, through my fucking 40 years of being alive, seeing him on screen, not coked up, was like, you know, I mean, I think the last time I actually probably saw him was when he got told he was an asshole by a fucking cash machine, you know, but now he's in his own film, adapted from his own book, playing a character that never really existed, but it's great because as a fan you're like, oh my god, it's him, holy shit.
It's the creator.
It's the creator. And my other favourite sequence was Bill Hader's, you got to be fucking kidding me sequence with the spider fucking head thing. Like, if they hadn't done it, I think a lot of people would have been like, oh man, that was a rip-off of the Thing. But sticking it in there made you go, yeah,
we know it is.
They're fans of the Thing.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant, yeah.
Sure. Now, I got, like, favourite scenes, and I've also got, like, great visual moments from the film. So the balloons under the bridge, when the sea of red balloons, absolutely brilliant visual. Henry being ejected out of the sewer system with the water gushing through, the camera pan of all the bodies, the almost upside down shot of him coming awake again.
Yeah.
Thought that was visually very, very good. The flashback to the ritual of Chud. I thought was great. Of course, the different Pennywise creature manifestations. All of that, like the whole LSD kind of vision piece. I thought was really interesting to look at. Pennywise in the Hall of Mirrors in the Funhouse.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got the swinging like 90s miniseries Pennywises, and then of course, Pennywise in there was great, and the whole luring Bill in there and then killing the kid. Yeah, great horror moment. I really liked the image of Bev saving Ben, like her covered in blood, reaching into the sand or the mud and pulling him out before they almost have their first kiss.
Yeah,
it's like that was a great visual moment. I really like the visual of the hands grabbing Bill as he's reaching into the sewer.
Yeah.
The way that it all moved up his arm really quickly. Obviously, I know it's CGI and it stands out, but the movement and the idea, the concept, I thought was neat and looked pretty creepy. I also really liked the image of Pennywise floating down from the giant statue. With all of the balloons, the way he's kicking his legs and the way he's tormenting him. It's like that's great. And of course, it's rare to see Pennywise just walking or moving because he's mostly either dancing or he's static. So actually having him move around the way he's like tormenting him, like come back and play with the clown as his face is slowly melting. Bev on fire in the school scene as she's chasing him through. I thought, another great visual moment. Another really great visual that I like is a transition where it cuts to the wide shot of the house beneath. You got the stars in the sky, and then the camera pans up to the stars,
puzzle.
And they become the puzzle pieces that Stanley's putting together, which is also of Bird, which of course call back to the book where he recites birds to defeat it or to stop himself from being afraid. So it's like that was just a very beautiful transition, seamless. So another great visual moment. Favorite scenes now, the birthmark girl being killed. Like I said, it was very reminiscent of the opening of the first film. So it was harsh, brutal, scary, really impactful. I guess I have to list the restaurant scene. It's great because it's the first time we have all the adult versions back together, interacting, catching up. There's a great moment where he's at the entrance and he asks Bev if there's a password, and that's very similar to their very first meeting in the first chapter. Great. Even though I like the baby stuff, I was trying to think, I was like, why are all these creatures like babies? And I was like, well, none of them have had kids. Maybe because of their past trauma. Maybe it's trying to bring some of that forward. Like there's a lot of subtext because the film doesn't really go into the trauma very much, even though it's kind of what it's about, but it's also, the film's just like, you're here for the clown and scary moments. So the deep kind of stuff is just going to be mentioned and not really gone into. The Marsh house or the Kirsch house with the old lady, great. They really did that well right up until the CGI monster. You mentioned it as well earlier, all of Bill Denborough's bad endings. So the scene with Stephen King in there, you mentioned. Definitely a favourite scene. Also, Stanley Spiderhead, you gotta be fucking kidding. Absolutely brilliant. The way that the effect works, watching the things come out of his eyes, it was great. And of course, watching the weird hands of his legs get put down, I was like, this is great. The design work here is great. Like, really impressed with that one. Lots of memorable moments and scenes and visuals. Really helped fill out that 3 hours. Iain, I think we know the answer to this, but how much do you recommend it? Chapter 2?
I totally recommend this one, but I think maybe I was just really, really lucky because I'd held out. You know, I hadn't rushed to go see it, so my anticipation or, you know, my expectations weren't too high. I already knew where the story went. I just needed to see it. And so, you know, hitting this one so quickly after the first one, it was still fresh, you know, and I sat down and I thought, oh my God, it's too long. But somehow the pacing just zipped right by. Maybe it was the acting, the writing, the editing, just things together. Like Gary said, yeah, there's some poor CGI effects, but I've seen worse, and so they're not really on screen for that long that you can sit there and start picking them apart. They're there just enough to scare you, keep you going, move you off, you know, get you into the next bunch of sequences. I loved Bill Hader as Richie. You know, I loved the guy playing Eddie. I thought those were probably my two favourite standout characters, next to Bev and Ben and their relationship. You know, Bill and Mike got a bit more of his historical role of all the notes and history to be able to play that he didn't get in the first one. And then it just ultimately just builds up to that final battle in the meteorite crater sequence, which, yeah, problematic or not, but that's where we're going. You know, that's what we're heading towards. I could easily just go out and buy these both now on DVD. I even felt, and you know, I was going on a limb, I even felt that I could even just sit my son down and go, hey, let's watch it. You know, and just, instead of watching the film, watching his reactions to his first time, as I had watched it for the first time when I'd been really young. But at the same time, that fucking clown. The fucking clown.
Yeah, I think I said this in the miniseries review as well, that I feel like it is a gateway horror movie for not children,
yeah,
but for young adults, you know, going into teenage years. It's not uber violent, and it's not, you know, it's almost tame. Like I said, it almost does. It hinges between both. I don't know if the film knew what it really wanted to be.
Yeah,
but I think it is such a popular. It's iconic. I think kids are gonna find a way to see these movies, and I don't think they'll be too troubled by it. They might have a few nightmares.
Oh yeah.
Also bring up Bill Skarsgård also said he had lots of recurring nightmares making it, and he was a little bit nervous about doing the second one, but of course relished the opportunity to come back and play the part, and has also said he's more than happy to come and play the part for the Welcome to Derry show that's going ahead right now.
I gotta admit, after watching it part 2, it was like late and I went to bed, and I think I had a nightmare because I woke up around about 4 o'clock and I was just like, I shouldn't have watched that before bed.
Well, I personally do recommend It Chapter 2 for fans of horror, of Stephen King, the miniseries, and of Part 1. As this chapter is a well-made homage to all those other parts.
Yeah.
On its own, Part 2 is well made. Great production value, great casting, brilliant sets, good music, lots of memorable moments, awesome horror imagery, and a great pace for a near 3-hour film. There really is a lot here to enjoy. Bill Skarsgård is brilliant as Pennywise, really made it his own. It's a real highlight of the film, and of course in altering the source material so as to feature Pennywise much more to capitalize on how iconic the character is. My biggest complaint for Part 2 would be the lack of depth in the characters. In the emotional investment I have with them as adults, it felt slightly flat. So the subtle moments that should have built up to be deserved emotional payoffs, they didn't land for me. And a lot of the horror in the film, or monster moments, were so brightly lit that they were not scary, and they looked like obvious CGI, which can be very, very distracting. The flashbacks were, honestly, mostly unnecessary. It was great to see the stars from Part 1, but the child actors looked like they were put through a 3D printer and then put into it with the noticeable de-aging.
They did look older, yeah, it was weird.
The green filter used over much of the film was, again, very distracting. And I think this film is a mixed bag. Your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy it, but I personally enjoy a good, long horror story. And for me, it mostly delivered. To the point, I'd welcome more Pennywise stories. So yeah, give it a watch. You'll float again. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Come back and play! Come back and play with the clowns!